What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disciple Me Now podcast. Yeah. Today we got Jaime Sanchez, normally behind the camera.
That's right.
He's at the table.
Yeah. Thank you for finally allowing me to get in front of the camera.
And for getting rid of Jackson for you. Get Jackson out of the seat, got Jaime in here.
Yeah, no. I actually kind of wanted to wait for the longest time not to even show up in camera. Just always have like my back towards it.
You'd be secretive.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, but it's all right.
Hey, well, this is going to be good. We got a special episode for all of you guys. This is going to be what we're calling Who Discipled You?
Yeah.
Yeah? So today we're talking about who discipled Jaime. And now I know we've been going through a series of spiritual growth, okay? Mm-hmm. But today we're going to take a step away from that. So this is not going to be part of that series. This is going to be a special featured episode. Yeah. So today we're hearing specifically from Jaime. And now we haven't done an episode about like what is discipleship? What does it mean to be a disciple? But I think you're going to get a lot of that today. So we're going to help you understand what discipleship is, what it means to be a disciple maker, and how to help someone follow Jesus by just hearing stories.
Yeah.
Hearing real life-on-life examples of following Jesus just in your life.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Okay, so if you guys don't know, Jaime is basically like the jack of all trades here at our church.
Yeah.
So he's basically like, if you were to call our church, you're probably going to talk to Jaime.
You will talk to me.
You will talk to Jaime. If you need something done at the church, Jaime's probably getting it done.
You'll talk to me.
Yeah. Jaime's like how we would describe, so me and Jackson, our primary focus is youth ministry. And Jaime would be described as Jackson's right-hand man.
Yeah.
So the right-hand man to the youth pastor, something's got to get done. If Jackson's not going to be there on Wednesday, Jaime can preach. Jaime can lead the pre-service prayer, pre-service meeting, organize the leaders, direct everything. He's the one that's making it happen. Okay. Also, recently, Jaime's the guy that does all the videos, all the photos for church, for people in the church. You're just like branching out with everything you can do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. I got the pandemic to thank for that.
Right?
A lot of extra free time. So I was like, man, I'm just going to learn a new skill.
Dude, for real. Right now, our church is under construction, and all of the staff is out of the building except for Jaime.
Except me.
I feel so bad every time I walk in. You're like, the only office that's still intact is yours, and you're just sitting there working away.
Dude, I'm working away, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're going to have a lot of advice and like real stories to share because you have such a broad reach across different domains of the church, and you've been impacted and changed probably in a lot of different ways by a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be cool to hear your story today.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited.
I think it'll be cool to jump right in. One of the things that is funny about Jaime is every time he meets people, he'll tell them that he's from Paris.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys didn't know, I'm actually from Paris. And one thing I always love to tell people is like, man, Paris is really, really, really nice. And then the Eiffel Tower is amazing. It looks great.
How big is this Eiffel Tower?
Great at night. I mean, it's pretty tall.
Yeah?
It's pretty tall.
Okay.
It looks really nice at night because it's got all the lights and stuff like that. And then I show them a picture, and they're like, everybody's always blown away because it's got a red cowboy hat on top.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm actually from Paris, Texas.
Texas.
Yeah, not France. So that's something I'll always do. And I'll pop up a picture here on the screen to show you what Eiffel Tower I'm really talking about.
I love it. I love being like a fly on the wall in those conversations whenever you meet people, because I'm just like laughing to myself as you're having this conversation, meeting people for the first time, knowing where it's going to lead,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I always like, I'm from Paris. And like, oh, for real?
Right.
What's your accent?
Okay, so take us back, all the way back to little Jaime in Paris.
Yeah.
So right now we're in Dallas. For those of you who maybe don't know us personally, our church is located in the Dallas area. But little Jaime, back in Paris, when you first started seeking Jesus, following Jesus, who were the people in your life at that time who had an influence in your life?
Yeah. So the person that really, I think, made the biggest impact was my late pastor of the church that I got saved at. His name was Russell Mills.
Okay.
And man, Pastor Mills was a one of a kind dude. I mean, he was one of a kind dude because, you know, I didn't know like anything about the Bible. I didn't know anything about leadership. I didn't know anything about Christian lingo and all this stuff. And I remember one of the, I think it was maybe a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks after I got saved, he comes up to me and asks me if I want to lead a Sunday school class.
What? Just throwing you in the deep end right there.
And, you know, looking back then, I was like, man, I'm okay. I was just like, okay, I'll do it. And, you know, a few years ago, I would have looked back and be like, man, that was a huge mistake. Because I did not do well.
So you actually did end up leading a Sunday school class. Okay.
I said yes. And I think it went on for a few weeks, maybe 2 months.
Okay.
And so
what ages are this? Like this is like elementary school?
No, so these were teenagers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like,
how old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
I was 19. So these were, these were students. So,
Okay.
now that I'm thinking about it, it was youth.
Yeah.
It was youth. And so, man, I cringe. I cringe so hard thinking about those moments and trying to prepare the things that, the curriculum and everything. I mean, I just cringe so hard because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was talking about half the time.
Yeah.
But man, kudos to Pastor Mills for seeing, something within me and really pushing me to hey, you're a natural leader. I want you to do this,
Yeah.
And he really pushed that. And that wasn't the only time. I mean, there was multiple times where, if he found out that I kind of knew how to do something, man, he'd ask me to, hey, can you do this for me? And
he was just always really willing to just keep throwing you in.
Oh, yeah.
Giving you opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it started the very first time I met him, actually one-on-one after I got saved. He was like, Jaime, do you have a Bible? And I was like, no. And he literally was just reading, when we walked into his office, he was reading a Bible, and he literally closed it up and handed it to me. I still have it, and it just meant a lot to me because, he gave it to me, and he's like, Jaime, when you read this, you're going to laugh, you're going to be mad, you're going to cry. And it's really cool to actually, as I'm reading, through Bible stories, man, I'm always reminded of those words that he told me. And so, he was always he was always encouraging me and stuff like that. I also did our live stream there. I started our live stream at that church.
You were recording the live stream?
Yeah.
What? Okay.
So because he found out I in high school, I kind of liked that kind of,
Okay.
I studied a little bit of.
How did he find that out about you?
Just talking.
Okay.
Just talking, meetings with him and stuff like that.
Were these like formal meetings, let's sit down, come to my office, or are they just in passing at church?
Yeah, in passing through serving.
Okay.
He'd just ask me questions and stuff like that, a little bit about my past and stuff like that. And so I just, bring something up. And then, a few weeks later, it's like, hey, I'm listen to this. I've got an idea. I want to do this. Do you think you can help me? And I was like, sure, And I think, and I know for a fact that looking back, that's where I developed my servant heart.
Yeah.
Towards ministry.
Yeah.
It was because of Pastor Mills.
That's cool.
He really encouraged me and pushed me in those areas. And at the time I was like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. But looking back now, I see what he was doing and what was beginning to develop within me. Now I'm able to look back and, say that, man, that's where it started.
Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like that's an awesome example because it's really difficult to do discipleship in a way that's like in the moment, on the spot of like, oh, I was talking to this person.
Yeah.
And from what they were talking about, I could see they're passionate about videos.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then being able to navigate that and putting you in a position and opportunity to grow that gifting and calling and passion of yours.
Absolutely.
And that's like next level discipleship right there. Being able to use those conversations and those life on life moments to like help grow people and take people farther.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And he did that, man. He was always encouraging, not only myself, but a lot of people, a lot of my closest friends at that church, he was constantly pouring into. So he really, really believed in serving, and I think that showed.
Do you see anything in him that now you discipling other people have almost taken on yourself, and you're starting to do things similar to how he was doing for you?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that always really stood out to me, and this is now this isn't like serving, but one thing that he always really tried to teach was tithing and like the principles of tithing and stuff like that. And anytime I see a student, when they tell me they got a job, or a friend that has a job, or and I know that, and I start talking to them if they start tithing and stuff like that, I really, really try to encourage them to tithe. And there's a few things that I remember he spoke to me about tithing, and that's like what I always try to go to. So I would say in that area, yeah.
That's cool.
For sure.
Okay, if there's anyone else from Paris, remind me to circle back there. But you coming to Dallas now, moving from Paris to Dallas, what were you looking for? What type of people were you drawn to that eventually became disciple makers in your life?
So in Paris, I really wanted to pursue evangelism.
Okay.
Now, at the time, I knew I was called to ministry, but I didn't know what that looked like. And
you're still 20?
Yeah, I was like, well, by then I think I was like 24.
Okay.
So I mean, I was still learning a lot, especially just kind of like ministry, like the behind the scenes things that I was trying to figure out, and things that I wanted to do. And so I only knew of two things. Like if you wanted to be in ministry, I thought it was you were either a pastor or an evangelist. Okay. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know if I really want to be a pastor. Okay. I've seen, a few evangelists come through town, and I'm like, man, these guys are pretty cool. You know, I was like, that's what I want to do. Nice. Yeah. And so, so that's actually kind of what brought me to Dallas. Okay. Was through a couple of evangelism friends, and then one specifically that, kind of brought like the SUM campus.
SUM being
a Bible school.
A Bible school. Yeah, okay. Bible School of Urban Mission.
Yeah, School of Urban Missions. Okay. And they started a campus in South Dallas. Okay. And so that's what brought me to the Dallas area. But it was also through that I met two evangelists that really spoke into my life. And I began to be discipled by them, but not even realizing it.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. So it just started happening without you necessarily looking for it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just, I was drawn to these guys because, they're, one of them, he was pretty new. He was kind of starting out, so he was still learning as he was going. And so I saw a lot of behind the scenes with that, and I learned a lot from that. And then the other one was very seasoned, right? Like, and he was, had all these speaking engagements and stuff like that, and was starting to travel, I say all over the world, but I mean, he was traveling, to multiple states, all over Texas and stuff like that. And through those two guys, I think the thing that I learned the most was honor, like honoring those in authority. Yeah. Especially the seasoned evangelist. I mean, that was like his biggest thing, is honoring people and honoring those in authority. And it's crazy because like through all that, like we were all like he was connected through my pastor back in Paris, you know?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So it's just like this, inner line web of like connections that like brought me here, you know, and people that I met and stuff like that. But I think that then the first part of my life in Paris, I learned, you know, how to be a servant.
Okay.
And then the next thing was honor, you know.
Okay.
In the next
How did
life.
both of those people? You said one guy was more behind the scenes.
Mhm.
One guy was more. Would you say up front?
Yeah, he was up front. I mean, he was receiving calls to be, you know, to be asked to go and speak at their churches and stuff like that.
Okay. So how did they, in their own way, in different ways, be teaching you about honoring authority?
Yeah. So I remember with one of the guys, the pastor that he was going to speak at, asked him to do something specific. He asked him to do something specifically, and I remember him coming back to me and saying, "Man, I don't know how I feel about that. You know, like I don't really agree with that.
Okay.
I don't want to end the service that way. You know.
Yeah.
But he was like, you know, I want to honor him and stuff like that. And so he followed through with what the pastor had asked him to do, and the service ended up being a really powerful service.
Okay.
You know, and I think through that, like, I was able to see what honoring authority, even when you don't agree with them, how God can still move and speak to you directly.
Okay. So how did he bring you into observing that? Like, were you right by his side the whole way? Did he catch you up on all this that happened after the fact?
No, I was beside him. So yeah, so it was. I mean, you know, both of them were really laid back guys and stuff like that. But you know, their biggest thing was like, man, I want you to be right beside me and watch how I interact with the pastors. I want you to see how I speak to them, what I do after, what I do in preparation, you know, for a service. Making sure that you know, and they will always say this, like, you always make sure if ask what the pastor wants. Like, you know, does he want you to end the service? Does he want you to hand them the microphone? I mean, these very small things that one doesn't really think about.
Yeah.
But he's like, man, he's like, you know, this thing will, you know, it's a big deal to them. You know, they want to know. And, you know, one of the things that they would always say is like, you know, sometimes you don't always agree with what they want you to do, but you still do that by, you know, and honor them. And kind of what we always say here is you honor people. Oh man, my mind went blank. We honor God by honoring people.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
that's cool.
And so, that was like what I was learning, you know, seeing these things and stuff like that. And I remember, you know, when they would leave and get like an honorarium or a gift or something like that, they would always tie that back to the church as a way to kind of honor them for allowing them to come and speak there and stuff like that.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I thought that was always really cool because, you know, I feel like the pastor would always appreciate that, man. You know, they got this love offering, and they're also willing to tithe on that back at their church and stuff like that. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
What strikes me as really cool about that is I doubt that either of those guys had a document on their computer that said, teaching disciples how to honor people.
Yeah.
Step 1, step 2, step 3. Like, really what it sounds like is they probably didn't even have that as like the first thing on their mind of, I need to teach Jaime how to honor people.
Yeah.
It was really just like, hey, follow me, be my shadow.
Yeah.
Be my shadow, follow me around. And in that process, you started noticing things.
Yeah.
You started noticing they are really intentional about handing the pastor the microphone, really intentional about asking the pastor, how does he want to be involved in the service? And those things honor the pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that like, I notice things and sometimes it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I notice the smallest things, and I could tell, you know, body language, the way they, you know, they would talk to a pastor. I know sometimes some of these pastors just, they didn't really know the evangelist all that well, so they were very hesitant with a lot of things, you know. And I could see that. And so, but I could also see my friends being very, very honorable in those moments to make sure that they didn't offend or they didn't cross the line that they weren't supposed to.
Yeah. I think that's also really reassuring to disciple makers, to people who are listening to the podcast. I hope that's reassuring in the sense of realizing like you can just live your life following Jesus, and the way that you live, when you have people alongside of you, they're just going to notice things about how you live. You don't have to have everything completely scripted. You can just be you, and they're going to learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we got little Jaime in Paris, little Jaime coming to Dallas.
Yeah, not at Crossroads yet.
Okay, so now our church is Crossroads of Life
Yeah.
for those who are listening. So coming to Crossroads of Life, what were like the spaces in the church that you began to interact with people who started discipling you?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned him in episode 1.
Okay.
Pastor TJ.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I actually met Pastor TJ at SUM.
Okay.
And so he was actually the one that invited me to Crossroads. He's like,
okay.
So, I was traveling with the evangelist on the weekends and attending a church every so often in South Dallas. But most of the time, I just go back to Paris to go to church on Sundays. If I wasn't traveling on the weekends.
How far of a drive was that?
That was about a 2.5-hour drive back home.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'd stay the weekend here, and I would attend church, but I didn't have a home church. And so when I started attending SUM, met Pastor TJ, he was just like he does that covert ops type thing. He's just like he's trying to disciple you without you knowing that you're being discipled.
Yeah.
And so he'd ask me questions and stuff like that, and he'd always ask me how I was doing. If I went to church. I mean, he was checking up on me. He was just asking me like, man, have you been to church lately? Where are you going? How long have you been there and stuff like that? Are you tithing?
Yeah. It sounds like you had a lot of people who did that covert ops thing with you.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to disciple you without letting you know.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
There's not really like a discipleship DTR moment. It's just, they just start doing it.
Yeah. And I think that's how most of my Christian life has been. It's been a lot of like, hey, I see potential in this guy. I want to teach him a few things. I'm not going to tell him I'm discipling him. I'm not going to ask him if I can disciple. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And
so that's what Pastor TJ is doing for you.
Yes.
And invites you to Crossroads.
Yeah.
Was it really once you started going to Crossroads that relationship went to the next level? Or was it really like starting to do that even before?
Yeah, it started before.
Okay.
It started before because, man, we hit it off really well. And if you know Pastor TJ, I mean, he's really fun to get along with.
Yeah.
And you can just start talking about anything, and walls come down really quickly with him. And so I really felt like that friendship was developing even before I came to Crossroads. Okay. And he invited me to Crossroads, and that's how I started attending here. Okay. But I mean, there was a lot at that moment. There was a lot I was going through, mentally, emotionally, especially back home. And so he started asking me, like, that was meeting Pastor TJ and attending SUM and coming to Crossroads. In those moments, I had never been asked hard questions. And he was asking me some of the hardest questions about
Can you remember any of the questions?
Yeah. Like I remember I was wanting to talk to this girl again.
Okay.
And we had dated a few times in Paris, and we started talking again.
Okay.
And so he just straight up asked me one time, he's like, "Why do you want to be with her again?"
Yeah.
It didn't work. This is going to be the fourth time. What makes you think this is going to work?
Yeah.
It's like, why do you want to be with her? Why do you want to marry her?
Yeah.
Why her?
Yeah.
And those are tough questions where I really had to stop and think and ask myself, why do I want to be in this relationship? And if it wasn't for those tough questions, I probably would have pursued that relationship again, and there's no telling what would have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are questions that he really has to get to know you in your life before he can ask those questions.
Yeah.
It's not like he's asking you, like, Jaime, why do you think that God allows evil in the world?
Right.
No, he's like, gets to know you in your life and then challenges you on very specific things.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like, I want to say maybe 6 months into our relationship,
Okay.
our friendship,
Okay.
that he really started asking me some of these hard questions.
Okay. So then as your relationship with him is growing, because now you've known him for years.
Yeah.
What are things, looking back on your relationship with him, what are things that he has done that have proven to be really helpful for you in growing spiritually?
Yeah. So as of late, some of the things that he will always ask me about is just like my plans of the future,
Yeah.
and that's something that I see that he does with everybody. He's because I think as young adults, I think sometimes we want to put off some things, and be like, man, I'm just going to take a break and kind of like enjoy life and stuff like that. And sometimes you enjoy life for too long and you kind of miss out on some opportunities, and you're like, man, I'm too old for that,
Yeah.
And so he's always been really good about asking me like where I am, what I'm looking to do, if I'm going to go back to school, or if I tell him I'm really passionate about this thing, or I'm learning about this thing. He's really good about following up with me and being like, okay, hey, you said you were going to do this.
Yeah.
Have you been doing it?
That's cool.
And so, and it's hard sometimes because I see him and I know that conversation's coming, and you almost kind of want to avoid it. But at the end, I'm always glad that we have those conversations, because it's a good reality check, and it puts me in check.
Yeah.
It puts me in check, and I'm able to be like, okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. I need to. And so those here at Crossroads, man, like for sure, Pastor TJ has been like my number one influencer. He's been like my number one encourager, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that he's been that covert ops kind of discipler, without realizing it, and if it wasn't for someone like Pastor TJ, I don't know if I would have made some of the decisions that I needed to make.
Yeah. That's cool. So coming on this podcast, was there anyone else that you had in mind that you're like, this person really had a big influence on my life? I'd love to highlight this person and something they did for me.
Yeah. So I guess this person actually reached out, and I was also wanting to reach out to him and ask him to disciple me.
Okay.
And so it was actually pretty cool that like he had also reached out to me and be like, hey man, I feel like I want to disciple you.
So he reached out to you first, or you reached out to him first?
He actually reached out to me first.
Okay.
But I was planning to reach out to him.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
So it was just kind of like he asked me, and I was like, bro, I was literally thinking about asking you, if you would disciple me. But
who is this person?
His name's Rabia.
Okay.
Rabia, man, he is one of the most authentic guys that you'll ever meet, and he's very intentional. I mean, very intentional. And I think that's like the thing that I probably grasped the most, the one thing that I really learned the most about him, and just seeing behind the scenes of what he was doing, was he was so intentional with making sure he texts certain people and reached out to them and had lunch with them and checked up on them and stuff like that. And so that like I realized that we need that, especially our students. They need that. You need to be very intentional. You can't just say you're going to do something and you're like, yeah, man, I'll follow up with you, in a week or so, and then just kind of like forget about it. Next time you see him, you're like, oh, hey, how were you?
Yeah.
What did you do? What you said you were going to do? No, man. Like Rabia's like, hey, I'll follow up on you on Thursday.
And then he did it.
Thursday morning, you wake up to a text and be like, hey, bro, what's up?
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So very intentional guy.
That's cool. Okay, so let me run it back real quick.
Yeah.
Just to catch everyone up, to remind us all some of the people you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then you can fill in anything I miss. Okay. So back in Paris, your head pastor was really great about giving you opportunity, and developing your passions by putting you in places of service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then coming out to Texas with a passion for evangelism, you got to really be the shadow of two different guys who, without doing anything scripted, just being with them in their life, you learned what it's like to honor people well.
Yeah.
Then Pastor TJ was really big in your life. And one of the things that he did really well was asking tough questions and asking you about your plans for the future.
Yeah.
And not just settling for whatever answers, but really challenging you on stuff.
Absolutely.
Then we got Rabia, who was really great about teaching you what it's like to be intentional with other people and following through on the things that you commit to with someone you're discipling and people who are involved in your life.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. It was a good time talking to Jaime. I hope that you were able to learn a lot of great stuff, apply it to your life, and maybe you saw yourself in some of the stories that he was sharing. So thanks, Jaime.
Absolutely.
And thanks, guys. Have a good week.